Nate there?
He was, maybe he got mad at him on the way.
Yeah.
Nate, can you hear us?
A little more to, it's the same.
Yep, now I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. All right, so we're good to go? We're good to, we're recording, we're good to go?
It's recording, so Wes, turn it over to you.
Yes, we will call this meeting of the planning commission to order at 6:20. Apologize for anyone that was planning on watching for the delay, just experienced some technical issues. We are in a different room than our normal meetings are. Very quickly, we have a roll call. Everyone is here in attendance with the exception of our township planner. He is joining us remotely. The first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from August 12th, 2025. Does someone want to make a motion to approve those minutes?
Motion as submitted.
Is there a second? Second. Discussion, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Then we also have meeting minutes from the August 26th, 2025 workshop meeting. Is there a motion to approve those meeting minutes?
Make a motion.
There's a second. Second, we have a second. Discussion, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All right. Our two items that are pretty simple. The next is getting into the application ordinance review, which many hours have gone in to this process. So we're kind of at the end stage of that review. Nate, if you want to take over from here, explain what we've got and what the next steps are.
Sure thing. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I just want to let everyone who is watching remotely or joining us, or certainly obviously for our staff and planning commissioners to know, we have been going over what we're calling administrative zoning text amendments now for the last several months. As I noted at our workshop, these are administrative text amendments that will allow staff to administer and enforce the zoning ordinance better. So I think it's just important to continue to note that we're not looking at making any modifications to uses that are allowed in different zones, making any changes to the zoning map, the use matrix. These are all administrative changes that will help staff, in particular the community development department and the zoning officer, review and issue permits, review and deal with potential violation matters, or help us as we look at potential applications or appeals before our zoning hearing board. So I again, for purposes of just setting this up for people who might be watching this the first time, that's what we've been spending the last several months doing. And with that, following our August workshop meeting, we did have a significant amount of feedback from the Planning Commission, which we thank you all for very much. And we also received feedback from staff within that time, including the township solicitor, the township engineer, and then both Vince, Chris, myself are talking regularly on this. So for purposes of this evening, if it would please the Planning Commission, what I think the best thing to do would be to go through the modifications that we had discussed at the last meeting at the workshop, and just run through each of the sections as we did previously, talking about the modifications, and then also to give you a little bit of feedback on some of the comments that we've recently received from legal and engineering on potential changes that we would finalize within the next 12 to 24 hours within the document that you're looking at right now. Is that a comfortable exercise for everybody this evening right now?
Yes.
Okay, great. I just wanted to make sure. And before we start doing that, does anybody have any questions or comments or things that they feel are important to discuss prior to us going through everything with the fine-tooth comb here? Okay, can everybody hear me all right?
Yes, you can keep move forward.
Okay. All right, great. So I think one of the first things, if you were to look at the large overall PDF that we distributed previously for the Planning Commission in preparation of tonight's meeting, We can bypass the quick memo here. I'm just giving everybody an update on what we did there in terms of work since that time. Really, one of the first things that I would like to discuss with the planning commission, because it is new, and this is with the wise recommendation of our township zoning officer, Chris, here, is we have a section for a savings clause. There's an existing savings clause that talks about legal action for the chapter of the zoning ordinance. But there was also previously, in his professional experience and in me looking at some of the ordinances with our peer communities, a savings clause that assists us when it comes to new uses and how they're applied in the ordinance. Essentially, as we're all probably aware, there are new uses of new types of businesses, restaurants, you name it, that you see in the news, in the newspaper, popping up all over the region, that really kind of didn't exist 10 years ago or 15 years ago. What we're doing with this savings clause is essentially saying if a use that is within the ordinance is not currently listed, and of course, we do try to think of every single use, but that can be quite challenging. Then that use would be considered as a conditional use in the township. That way, at the least, we have a way to administer a new proposed use that has not yet been considered by our ordinance, and they could come up new uses all the time. So this is a fairly common thing that is in numerous zoning ordinances within the region. Chris recommended it from Hellertown as well, and we feel that it'll serve us pretty well. So that is something new since the last time we met. Does anybody have any questions about that? Like I said, it's pretty standard, but it does put us in a position where if something new comes up that is not contemplated in our ordinance, it would be a conditional use that would be processed through the township.
There's just a couple of typos in that red language that we did fix. It will be fixed. Just so
Correct.
And it should be 27-2402 and 27-2403, which are the procedures for conditional uses.
Got it. Okay. Does anyone have any comments, opinions on that suggestion? Sounds like a good idea. Nate, no comments from us.
All right, great. Thanks, Wes. Moving right along, as we've discussed previously, and hats off to Mark for his assistance here. Essentially, one thing that we did want to make sure that we covered with this round is also procedure for the conditional use. And our procedure for the conditional use is such that we want to ensure that a conditional use is reviewed and seen by the township and the board prior to the acceptance of any preliminary or preliminary final plans, because a conditional use and that process can impact designed and engineered plans. Our current ordinance contemplates having everything come in at the same time. And one thing that we've seen, and again, since these are administrative changes, from an administrative level, one thing that we've seen is the conditional use process can change how a plan is designed. It can change how a lot is laid out. It can change how parking is laid out. It can change a number of different items. And so what we are now asking for better administration of our zoning ordinance is that applicants proceed through the conditional use process prior to submitting preliminary final plans, which actually would be beneficial for everyone, including the applicants, because they wouldn't have to go back and potentially and likely revise or modify existing preliminary plans while they go through conditional use. It just makes it a linear process, which actually, again, many of our peer communities do, and is more or less standard. You get your use by going through the conditional use process, and once that's complete, then you can submit your preliminary and final, or preliminary then final land development plans, which would be reviewed and eventually approved by the township. Does anybody have any questions with respect to that?
I can comment again that I advise this language to simplify a little bit so that it's easier to understand, but the intent of the language is the same. It just says you're going to get a conditional use first before the township will accept land development or subdivision plans. And it just directs the township staff not to accept an application for subdivision or land development until there's proof that they got the conditional use.
So this is just again, a buffer for the unknown.
It's kind of like if you're gonna get a land development, if you're proposing a land development where you need zoning relief, variance relief.
Yeah.
The better practice is to go get your zoning relief first.
Right, so we don't waste time.
Again,
Yeah.
conditional use is essentially the same, it's a zoning relief, it's a use that needs to be approved by the board.
Okay.
So the ordinance will now say, go get that first, before you bring us your land development.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think if I might add, what we've experienced in the last couple of years is applicants were submitting concurrent conditional use and land development applications. On simple projects, it can happen, but we haven't had anything that's simple. And things just really blew up and became so overly and unnecessarily complicated that prompted staff to look into this and say, we need to make some adjustments.
Sure.
Because you really can't give somebody land development approval if their conditional use is still hanging.
Right.
And applicants would show up and feel like, oh, conditional use isn't, that's a permitted use, you should just give us the approval.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work that way.
And from a time frame standpoint, as far as how long a project would take to start to finish, is probably the same anyhow, because you still need both of these things and they can't happen at the same time. They're already happening one after the other.
Exactly. And I think one of the things from an engineer plan preparer perspective, it's the owner's, the applicant's risk to do them concurrently. Because if you prepare your land development plans and they don't include anything that may be a condition of the conditional use approval,
Right.
you have to make those revisions, which kind of sets everything back. And so practically speaking, even though I don't know if the applicants will see it this way, practically speaking, you're 100% right. It really should not extend the process.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Ozias, your comments too, I did see your comments from Nate today, right before the meeting, and it does address the completeness issue as well. That language. So they won't accept applications without things that are supposed to. Clarifies that, yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful,
Yeah.
Very, yeah.
because we have seen a lot of submissions that come in and they really aren't complete, so I wasn't aware of your feedback, so that's really good. So, good. Good to hear that.
All right, Nate.
All right, moving along here. And again, I appreciate everybody helping mediate this conversation, because I think we have, the perspective of a lot of different experts who are reviewing these complex plans that we've been getting. I would like to take it to number 2, which we mentioned previously in the conditional use process. It's C2, and that's the written notice. So one of the items that we had dealt with in the past, and this is coming from practice at the staff level, is that we have been requiring certified mailings with return receipt request as part of the public notice process. The MPC doesn't require that. Lower Macungie Township did it as essentially like an above and beyond. The challenge is with people or entities who are property owners, receiving and accepting a certified mailing may not be possible, because if it's delivered to someone's home in the middle of the day, they could be away at work. If it's delivered to a PO box or something along those lines, there's no means of getting it then as well. And plus, there's a significant cost burden for both the applicant and the township to be doing the certified mailings. So our recommendation is to be in line with state law and still do first-class mail, but not certified. And in addition to that, we previously had a buffer of notice to all property owners of this real property that would be the subject of a conditional use at 150 feet. And we are recommending it at 100 feet now, which does shrink it down some. It still is very robust and still includes all the abutters and stakeholders. And of course, if we are doing conditional use, it's publicly noticed on the township website, as well as in the newspaper, but it does take it to 100 feet. And again, we're doing all this to be as much in line with state law as we can, and also to try and help our applicants as well as, run our municipal operations for the benefit of of all the taxpayers. So I'd just like to point that out to everybody one more time. And there weren't any major changes contemplated since the workshop with respect to those matters, but I did want to bring it to everybody's attention.
Anyone have any opinions on the change of the distance or the change of the certified mail? Great. All right, you can proceed, Nate.
All right, great. So when it comes to conditional uses at that point, I think we are now moving into actually the definitions term section. I would like to note again, we had a number of very good recommendations from planning commissioners at the last meeting with respect to definitions of terms. We also have had some very wise feedback from the township solicitor's office as well on how to word this. The definitions section is pretty critical for the enforcement of the ordinance, as well as the interpretation of uses. So we do want to make sure that we can button it up as much. And again, as I've mentioned in the past, a lot of this is based off of working activity that our staff has done, and basically between Vince and Chris, prior zoning officer, myself, we've all basically created a list of items. The township solicitor's office, township engineer's office, everybody's created a list of items that we wanted to make sure that we addressed. So, running through that again real quick, we are talking about ensuring that when we talk about our design guidelines, that they're issued with architectural grade cladding. When it's required as part of a conditional use or a land development. That way we are ensuring that what we spent a fair amount of time putting together to establish a look and feel for Hamilton Boulevard and the township as a whole is, continuing to move forward. And again, just because there are a number of them, banks and financial institutions, again, we just note that this was actually just a term that was a use that's permitted in the township. We have a number of them, but we didn't have a full definition set for it. So part of this exercise was ensuring that every single use on our use table had a definition, so that there was no room for further interpretation. And of course, this is quite simple. I mean, a bank and a financial institution, they are what they are. I have received some recommendations from the township solicitor's office regarding certain aspects of financial uses, where we want to clarify it potentially before it goes to the Board of Commissioners. But that's just to tighten it up and to make sure that other financial uses that are more or less commercial or retail, but not technically banking institutions or credit institutions, are separated. So we would just clarify that in a final recommendation that would be going to the Board of Commissioners. Again, I know we're at B and it'll go a little bit of a ways, but just defining boat and RV service repair, bottling and packaging, both uses that are allowed in the township, previously not defined, now they are. We wanted to make sure that building coverage included covered porches, covered decks, 3 seasons rooms, sheds, garages, just because again, it's when someone comes in with a plot plan of their property, we want to make sure that we are clear and concise about what qualifies and doesn't towards the building coverage. There was at one point a definition of cellar and basement. We just made it basement, which we already scrolled past, but for removing ambiguity, we took care of that. Commercial laundry and dry cleaning, same thing. Previously not defined, now defined. Construction and building supply showroom. This has been a discussion point for a while. We just wanted to ensure that we had a definition that was clear and concise. So we have worked to make that definition as clear and concise as possible. The township solicitor, Mark, had some further recommendations to just clear up and tighten up the language a little bit. But beyond that, we now feel comfortable that it's clear, and that there shouldn't be any room for misunderstanding on what the use is supposed to be. Cultural center and cultural facilities, we just wanted to ensure that historic reenactment and interpretive exhibits were included, because in the last 5 years, we've had both of those, including a film for historic reenactment that took place in the township. So we just wanted to make sure that that was covered in the zoning. For daycare center, I know this was a discussion point previously. We just wanted to note that it would be more than 4 children. That is the number that would cross the threshold of when you would qualify as a daycare center in the township, more than 4 children. So that is just clarification on our end. We defined emergency services, making our way through the alphabet here. I apologize, but we defined emergency services were not previously defined. And then I'm making my way down quite a bit now because we didn't have a lot of changes to some of these that were working quite well. Minor coverage, when we talk about impervious coverage, we just wanted to ensure that since so many people are using pavers and paving blocks now on their back patios, that there's no room for misinterpretation, that doesn't count. It does, water does run off of it, so we just added that in.
Hey Nate,
Yes.
can you jump back to household pets, just what was that?
Oh, sure. Sorry, my apologies. So for household pets, we did have farm stock, and it was previously talked about changing that over to livestock, since that's the more commonly utilized term now. And we're just clarifying that livestock doesn't count as a pet. We want to always be clear that, as a agricultural community, we do have working farms in the township, but there is a clarification that should be noted that, livestock animals don't really count the same as dogs or cats or gerbils and so on and so forth. That's all. We simply, when we jump to L, we just defined LED, light emitting diode. That's taken essentially straight from, I think, the internet on current industry practices for the lighting industry, just so that it's very clear what an LED is, but we utilize the terminology within the ordinance fairly often. So we wanted to ensure, and I wanted to ensure that it was defined. Still in L, light metal processing, same thing. Use has always been regulated in the township, was not defined, so we added the definition. I'd like to take a second to talk about lot width. So we have it here as the horizontal distance measuring between property lines and the ultimate street right of way. Previously, it was at the building setback line, which is essentially where your front yard would start, and that's where the measurement would be. There was discussion some time ago, back around 2020, 2021, about perhaps doing that measurement from the ultimate street right of way from side to side. And we've actually heard recommendations now on a couple of times from Brian in the township engineer's office that, the building setback line really is kind of the industry standard. I think at the time when it was previously being discussed about 4 or 5 years ago, the desire was to look at it from a different point of view as we kind of reach build out as a community, with available subdivisions currently in existence or getting built. And then, of course, obviously our continued land preservation. But there was a recommendation now on a couple of occasions, and Brian and I had a chance to go back and forth on this. And, this is kind of a design element that is also quite administrative when we're looking at our saldo and what we get in, but also our zoning ordinance application when permits come in for extensions or additions on homes, so on and so forth. The industry standard really is the building setback line. And I guess my question to the planning commission, and Brian, please feel free to chime in here, is if we could consider striking this, because I've certainly been swayed on this and convinced that, you know, working in a fashion that is considered industry standard is going to work for everybody in the long run. And it would probably be better for us to just keep it at the building setback line. Is there any, Brian, do you have anything you want to add to that before we maybe chat about this item a little bit?
No, just to make the point that I made to you earlier today, Nate, that the minimum lot width based on industry standard is typically measured at the front yard setback. And that's kind of where I thought it should be. I think that definitely has to be clarified that it's from the ultimate right of way line. Based on a lot of the frustrating conversations we've had to have on recent projects where people didn't want to offer the right of way, the ultimate right of way. I mean, that's just, these things are industry standards. So the minimum lot width, as is in most ordinances that I've worked in my 40 years, is minimum lot width is measured at the front yard setback. And for a kind of a standard rectangular lot, they really are one and the same. Whatever your lot width is at the right of way is what it's going to be at the front yard setback. The differentiation, it comes when you have lots on cul-de-sac where they kind of radiate out. You could wind up, if for argument's sake, you have a 50-foot front yard setback, well, that width, that setback might, if it's 100-foot minimum lot width at that 50 feet, you might not have 100 feet for the lot width. So it kind of takes that and ensures that the lot configuration will meet the intent. And my concern was if it's just a setback from the street right of way, we're not saying ultimate right of way, and we're just going from the street right of way line, you may wind up with a lot width that's not going to meet the intent based on geometry. So I just thought it'd be kind of, I don't know what prompted changes before, but my recommendation to Nate was we probably would be wise to go back to the industry standard. If that rambling made sense.
Well, yeah, I guess I'm trying to understand it a little bit more. I mean, once you described it as, I mean, I do generically think of a property, you know, square or whatever, but I mean, usually every property is actually very rarely perfectly square, you know, there's some variation there, so. Is this also affected by if there's an easement in a yard, or if you're on a corner that, you know, that because you're saying the front street right of way, but then there's a side, another right of way?
If it's a corner lot, the front yard setback has to be from each of the streets. Because the front yard setback is taken from the street right of way.
Right, so is that moving that line even further, because now there's another?
No.
I guess it's not, it's still the same. Okay.
No, it's still the same. It kind of comes into play a little more graphically, no pun intended, when you're dealing with lots that are not
Right.
close to rectangle. And like I said, the potential change jumped out at me only because I thought, why would we want to change it away from or not have it be what the industry standard is for the minimum lot width? You know, clarify in the ordinance that the front yard setback is to be taken from the ultimate right of way line, number one. And number two, the lot width should be measured at the front yard setback.
And so what are the? I mean, I think this is gonna come down to you guys figuring it out, because I think it's a highly technical industry one, but what are the positive or negative implications to an applicant or to the municipality? Or no implications, it's simply just functionality.
I think I don't know what Vince or Chris or Mark's experience has been, but there are times when you get a property that's maybe oddly shaped, or you get somebody that's trying to really jam lots in. And they'll have cul-de-sacs and as the lot lines radiate away from that cul-de-sac radius, people try to jam stuff in, and so you wanna make sure that you're getting a usable yard.
Okay, so this actually, using your suggestion, we should be making a better property. Because they're not right on the street and
Yes,
where we're required, okay,
number one,
Yeah.
yes, not right on the street, and number two, it's a much more usable area. That.
yeah, I mean, I makes sense.
And I think that if there were to be an oddball situation where instead of my example of things radiating out from a cul-de-sac, if you get a piece of property that's shaped differently where the front is really wide and that converges towards the rear, you know, depending on the geometry, it might put the situation, Chris in a situation where somebody comes in and they need to get a variance because. Or maybe not, it just looks really strange because at the front yard setback, they have their minimum lot width. But then it converges to the rear, they wind up with 5 feet. So it's gonna be like, well, is that really what we want either? But that's a case where. That's probably just one of those oddball lots, that's a remnant or something. The idea is to try to make sure we have consistency and usability. You know, so much of what the township has done with the ordinances is to try to make sure that everybody has a legitimate usable yard.
Yeah.
I just didn't feel like it was worth getting away from that.
Yeah, and I think, maybe say, Brian, the building setback line is more of a consistent measure in zoning, rather than the ultimate right of way line, right?
Right.
So the building setback line is gonna be this consistency with the zoning ordinance, whereas the ultimate street right of way or the right of way could vary. So I think it's very consistent, and I agree with Brian. Okay.
Yeah, and Brian, I appreciate the point that you made. When we look at the zoning, when we think about some of the saldo changes we made over the years, we really do care about end users, and future residents and existing residents, and ensuring that they can utilize their lot and that everything is clear and concise and to a degree uniform, so that everybody has the ability to enjoy their property. So, I just wanted to have that quick discussion since we're looking about revoking that. And if anybody has any questions or concerns about it, it's certainly something that we're looking to, we can continue to have, but it would be something that I would be changing back, almost immediately, given, Brian's very convincing, discussion with me on it. So, if there aren't any other more questions, we could move on to the next one.
Just to clarify what's happening, that definition is not changing. That's what we're saying. It's going to stay as it currently is.
It's gonna stay, but well, we're also going to ensure taken from the right of way, as Brian noted,
Ultimate right of way.
ultimate right of way. Yep.
But now, how do you guys are saying two opposite things?
Yeah, that's not what my understanding is. The stricken out language on the screen up there, is that still getting stricken out or is it staying? At the building setback line.
At the building setback line will remain.
And the part about the ultimate right of way is being removed. Am I wrong?
Yes.
But Brian, you say ultimate right away is the preferred, because that's the industry standard.
Well, the ultimate right of way. To me. Should be the standard because. Lot areas are measured from the ultimate right of way.
It's still a lot width we're talking about.
No, I understand.
Okay.
But
And then I'm not following what Brian's saying. I apologize.
But we've had projects come in where people didn't wanna offer the ultimate right of way line.
Yeah.
For one reason or another. My concern was if they are taking their front yard setback from the legal right of way line. Then that's not really what is intended. And if we're taking then the front yard setback, we need to clarify where is the front yard setback being measured from? And that to me translates into the lot width. Because the front yard setback, the minimum lot width should be measured at the front yard setback. So I guess I'm kind of taking it 18 steps back to say, let's make sure we're establishing where that front yard setback is taken from. And then the next step is clarify that that's what establishes where that minimum lot width is to be measured from. Does that help? Cause I agree with Mark, that's not as much.
I
I
think
want
in
to
this-
make sure these guys know what is happening. Nate, you're not changing this definition at all, right?
No, we're not changing the definition.
Okay, so you're not recommending an amendment to this definition. The current
Correct. The
Uh-huh.
current one stands.
measured between the side property lines at the building setback line.
Correct.
Yeah, that's why our Vince and Chris, you got here.
All the red in there is,
Okay, so I will be quiet about it. It just makes me really anal about things. And just thinking we maybe want to add to this for further clarification, but if it's staying as is, we should be fine.
I mean, to me, this is one of those ones that you guys figure out, because I don't think any of us.
So, I think, I agree, but frankly, and then to my point earlier, as it comes through with a subdivision. We'll be looking at these, okay, where's the building setback line? Wherever the building setback line is set back from right away, ultimate right away. That's where that's where the lot width
isn't it?
or is going to be measured from.
Right,
So that's the
In
thing.
relation to the plan in front of
and that's the,
us for
and
review.
that's the typical, custom in throughout townships that you've dealt with.
Yes,
Okay.
so to put your minds in,
The reason that that's important is because practically speaking, people come to this township sometimes. Zoning is somewhat unique to township to township, for obvious reasons. But for something like lot width, it exists in every township, and if we change it to something that doesn't exist anywhere else,
Yeah.
people come here and they go, this is not how we do it anywhere else. Why is it like this here?
Yeah.
So from a practical perspective, it makes sense to do what I think Brian's.
yeah, and I apologize if I've made things confusing. I was merely trying to add other parts to the existing definition to add clarification from the perspective of somebody putting a plan together. Conceptually, what exists right now can stay as is, and we're fine. That's all. I just know that we've talked about a bunch of different things. That's,
I'll let that side of the room
Yeah,
figure it out.
who knew we would have talked about lot width for 20 minutes? That's crazy. Let's go.
But yeah, now, and none of us are gonna offer opinions gonna change it, so we can move on, I think.
at the end of the day, we're fine, and we're protecting the township and making sure that everybody gets appropriate lots.
Maybe continue.
Shall we? Okay.
Yeah.
So manufactured house, manufactured home, at Vince's suggestion, very wisely, we basically made sure that it matches the state definition right from the UCC as to what qualifies as a manufactured house or manufactured home. So our original language, which was internally drafted, has been replaced with the state standard language, which will remove any possible misinterpretation for that item, which is regulated by the state in numerous ways. So, long story short, it was copy and paste straight from state regulations. Making our way through the M's, still medical offices, we just clearly defined it. What qualifies, what does not qualify. This is and we're working our way around figuring it out because, you know, there is a term of trade now, medical office building. It's essentially what this would be. Is a medical office building. And as I think we noted last month in August at the workshop, there is a provision there at the end ensuring that certain items in way of treatments, cosmetic and beauty treatments, are being done by licensed medical professionals. And in order to be qualified as a medical office, if you are offering that service, you need to be a licensed medical professional, which is regulated by the state. But we want to make sure that we're making that clear as well, given some of the questions that we receive about uses for existing businesses in the township. Still working our way through. We do have multifamily dwelling, which again, at the recommendation of the township solicitor, we are likely just going to clean up a bit just to make sure it's and it is, but we want to make sure it's even further in compliance with language from state law, federal law. And Mark will be helping with that to make sure that it's in good shape once and for all. Last month in August, we discussed the nonprofit sponsored recreational training facility. This was a use that was contemplated when we were doing the zoning rewrite in 2018 and 19 because of the possibility of this type of use actually coming into the township. Per Rick's recommendation, I added the language to ensure, because nonprofits have so many volunteers, that both the users as well as the staff could be either full or part-time volunteers. So that's covered per the note that he gave. And I think that covers us quite well, given the number of nonprofit organizations that we do have right in our general area.
Hey, can you go back to the multifamily?
Sure, happy to.
It's an extensive update, it looks like. Was there something specific?
For the stuff that he mentioned about me, change, is that what you're talking about?
Well, the multifamily dwelling?
Yeah, so the only thing I suggested here is if you read that definition, there is, the term is multifamily dwelling. And then within it, we reference multifamily apartment dwellings. So I just recommend consistency between the two. So we'll probably take the word apartment out and just leave it multifamily dwellings. Conceptually, nothing.
Okay.
Just verbiage. We talked. Well, family is an interesting word. Like,
Yes.
it can be an impactful word in the law, and
Yeah.
so we could do things with this definition that could potentially cause problems, I guess, if we
Yeah,
start getting into that. So we chose not to do that. It's very much tied to the building and the use of the building instead of.
Right.
family.
that's great. It was an extensive write-up, so that's why I want to understand.
Yeah,
What changed, but really nothing.
just to clarify, Nate and I discussed like the possibility of tying it to multiple family units in a living in a building and how you could change the definition that way, but we both agreed that the way he has it written with the minor changes that I mentioned is the way we want to go for now. If you, unless you have any comments that, or anyone else has.
I just wasn't sure if it was going into like where, like the, what's the EDU, like the external dwelling unit, or what is the?
Oh, the ADU, the accessory dwelling unit. Yeah, no, that's an entirely different use that's not contemplated as this. You know,
I
in
just wanted to
here.
say that wasn't, I've heard them referenced in real estate similarly, that's why I was questioning, so, okay, all good.
All right, great. Let's see, moving through the O's and P's here, I just want to make sure we get to some of the changes, and a bunch of these are minor changes, which again, I do apologize for, because they may seem minor, but as far as our enforcement and our administration, for instance, we did put the time frame on a temporary use permit not to exceed 6 months, to make it clear, because that was something that, again, from an administration standpoint, we were dealing with. So that 6 months was what was recommended by staff. We did define petroleum storage and pumping, which again was a use that was always regulated but not fully defined. So we just added the definition. Mark again has some wordsmithing on that for us just to tighten it up, but doesn't change it by any reason or what it actually is conveying. We did define public utility uses in quarry more clearly, making our way down to the P and Q. Again, not fully defined originally in the ordinance, now defined based off of just standard best definition practices. Is similar in line to what our peer communities have listed in theirs, and just covering everything that we need to cover for that.
Would we want to add anything to abide by any federal regulations? Which one we look to? Quarry.
This has county and state.
Yeah, we have county and state, because I did see most people listing county and state regulations, but we can add federal.
We
Local, county, federal. state.
Yeah, I mean, we can generalize that if it's preferred. I mean, we have that in other definitions where it just says federal, state.
I think we should cover them all.
Unless you're citing specific laws, you can generalize that.
Yeah. I think we should generalize.
All right. Repair service oriented business, again, existing in our use matrix for quite some time, never fully defined, so we just did, very basic, exactly what you would expect. We removed in its entirety rest home. There was a lot of discussion, back in 18 and 19 when we passed the ordinance about, all the different types of care and continuing care that can occur. And that is when we created the Life Care Center, terminology, definition, and use, which, basically, took a lot of different pre-existing uses and put them under the umbrella of a single regulated one. So we're removing that. And then as we make our way towards the end of the definitions here, I don't believe we have too much more other than the fact that we wanted to fully define some of our signage language. So freestanding signs, LED signs, monument signs, we just define them in the definition section of the ordinance, even though they're also covered in the sign section of the ordinance. And then continuing our way through, we have always had on the books substance abuse and treatment center. We defined it to make that clear. Same as taxidermy, theater, and cinema, uses that we've always had, never defined, now defined. The temporary parking lot per the West Coastville zoning district, that is in the event that someone wants to open a temporary private off-street parking lot, for people who would essentially be walking to or going to smaller businesses in the West Coastville district that can't provide the parking that's necessary because they are basically a retrofitted pre-existing house. That was what was contemplated when this was, basically written. So it is a defined use. The only reason why we're really discussing it now, because it's been on the books since 18, is we did want to clear it up, that in no case there would ever be long-term or overnight parking, and that people would be abiding by township ordinances. So there's no question that it's a temporary parking lot for a short period of time, and it cannot be a long-term parking lot, period. Making our way through the Ts and the Us, we really don't have much in the way of it there. We did tighten up the definition of wall, which is more or less right in line with the Pennsylvania UCC. We did tighten up the definition of warehouse, logistics, or distribution use, which is now an umbrella terminology that makes sure that it covers not just warehouses, but also all the ancillary and accessory major uses that would go with such an operation. So it's an umbrella use for the logistics and the distribution aspect of warehousing. Everything that goes into those operations that you see within the region, in our township, in Upper Macungie Township, is now included within this use. So we listed out basically everything we could that we know takes place as part of the process. We further defined wholesale activities as well, to remove any doubt and question of exactly what's going on there. And more or less, that takes us to the end in terms of anything with any changes of consequence. Looking through very briefly here one last time with the recommendations that were provided to us by Mark. Again, we covered potentially some wordsmithing with the bank and financial institution, as well as potentially the commercial laundry, which we would want to make sure that it doesn't change the matrix, but maybe in the definition, some just tightening it up. We talked about construction, building supply, showroom, in, lot width, a medical office, multifamily dwelling, petroleum storage. There is a question, just tightening up something on sign and billboard, and then wholesale. So those are items in the definition section that I will work with Mark just to tighten up to make sure that they pass legal muster. But beyond that, does anybody have any other questions or items that they want to discuss with that very long definition section we just went over?
I do have one item I wanted to run by you for feedback. I wasn't sure if we were holding our comments to the end. So unfortunately, it's back on page 12. Under boat and RV service repair,
Okay,
the 14 consecutive days. So in my mind, I'm thinking about people who look at the letter of the law. I wonder if we could be tighter for the reset loophole. So it's almost like if someone wanted to reset that clock over and over again, if the language can be tighter in a way to make it more about active servicing, or that it's, you can't reset that 14-day clock. It's like-
By moving it off the lot, bringing it back.
Like, you know, you see these people that do this, and not here, but you read these other stories. It's almost like they still can be within the rules by just resetting the clock. And so I think the language, the expert language, is there a way we can make it?
So I
It's actually-
see what you're saying, so something more or less, you know, put in there, no long-term storage, right? So that
More or less,
long-term,
it's-
long-term.
It's an active repair. Not that it's awaiting a pair or pickup, but it may not be stored for more than 14 days, if not receiving services listed above. So it's like you can reset keeping your boat RV as long as you
Take it off and bring it back.
For every 14
Right.
days, you
Yeah.
get.
The hard part about it for these guys would be if you tie it to like being actively repaired, how do they know whether or not it's being repaired? The
Is there
14 day,
language that can be more restrictive is the question, or not?
probably, I think we could tie it to a calendar month, like a certain number of, instead of consecutive. It could be a certain number of days in a calendar month, that might do it, because then that would prevent the shuffling, maybe.
There's always one that
Yeah.
does it, and then you're wondering.
Yeah,
It's minor, just thought it, I would bring it up to see if it, as you're playing with the language,
Yeah.
it makes sense to do something with that 14 day.
So was there anything about, you know, that maybe the language can be put in for that? You know, service and repair, long-term storage is not allowed. That type of business or something like that, you know, I mean, still comes down to the enforcement part of. You have to prove that, let's say 14 days.
But
You know, it's not that it's being repaired, right? That can't just be like a part of the lot to say,
Yeah.
hey, we're renting, we're monthly storage fees.
the
But
last
they
sentence,
should have an active service record. When my
Right.
car is at the shop, I have an actual, I signed
Right.
to get my key, right? Someone has to have something.
yeah,
Not that
I
it
just
turns
can't
into
stand boats, RVs on the road.
storage, right?
Well, it's just something. So,
we can
I
say,
think if there's a way, you know, you're good at that.
yeah, we'll do that.
yeah, thank you for that, because that's our biggest fear, Ozias. That's why that language is there, is, you know, the intent is to make sure that it's, you know, that they're being repaired and it doesn't become a storage facility, so.
Just something that I wanted to go back on. Thank you. That's it.
Does anybody have anything else with definitions?
No other.
Okay. All right, let's roll into the commercial districts. So this is part 10, for the commercial districts. Again, in these sections, as you can kind of see going through, we're not proposing too many changes other than items that have come up in the past with respect to applications that have been made, that have led to either zoning variances or notes that staff has put down. One of them that we discovered was mixed-use development, setting the threshold for that for 2 acres, which is less than the current. And the reason for that is we've received significant number of mixed-use development applications since 2018, where they were looking to potentially utilize smaller lots. And they either had to go get zoning hearing board approval and received it, or they ended up changing the use. So obviously with us, especially on Hamilton Boulevard, with the desire to, you know, continue to try and advocate for that mixed use development, a lot size of 2 acres was contemplated. And that is actually quite old. That this goes back to our 2020 and 2021 discussions. to just make sure that that threshold isn't a massive lot that basically doesn't exist anymore in the township. Because if you require 5 or 10 acres, you're getting to a point in Lower Macungie where you're not gonna find that anymore. Whereas we do have 2 acre lots, so,
So the current is 5 acres.
yep. Just a note here, utility features shall be shielded from view with architectural grade features. I mean, again, that's just enforcing our design guidelines. That's something that we always put in our comment letters, but we just wanted to make sure, since we're talking about elevator shafts and HVAC units, that they know that they have to screen and shield it. It's a requirement that we try to do anyway, but now it's very much laid out within the ordinance for the design team who's making a submission to us.
So Nate, can I just clarify, is that on all 4 sides of the building? Or is that?
Yeah.
meant to-
Yeah, we say completely shielded, so I mean, there are the screens now that are fairly common that are available. I'm more than open to suggestion if we want to say visible from the street, or there's a lot of different ways that many communities have the language. The goal here is to just make sure that if your frontage is on Hamilton Boulevard, it's shielded, but also if you're entering from the back, also the business end, even though it's not visible from the street, you don't have to look at all that machinery either. And that it's, adequately shielded to make sure that we have that high design standard that we've set.
Mark, do you think we need to add anything as?
What is that section called? Scroll up. I just want to.
Yeah, it's height regulations, and we just, and lot and width, so it's talking about all the different uses, and it's a note that then just says,
Yeah.
we're excluding architectural features, which we've always done, steeples and pitched roofs, clock towers. But then we know that the elevator shafts and the HVAC units are also part of that, and we just want to make sure that that's included.
I mean, completely can be interpreted to mean that like you can't see it from anywhere, like flying in a plane. So if you want to tie it to a vantage point, the street would be, like Nate said, would be one that you find other ordinances or abutting properties or something like that. So it's up to you. You can do that if you want. It's completely is very broad to interpretation. If you want that to, I mean, tell people.
That's an easy change. If we want to do from the street's fairly common, but
Asking
That-
Mark.
Generally speaking, you would do it from, some point on the ground, so the streets is a reference point.
Yeah, I just don't want it to come into play where, somebody's in a, we had that issue where at the, Lehigh Valley Route 100. That completely shielded from the view of now. The person that's higher, and they come and say, well, I can see that. And then it's just. 20 feet high because now the person, I just don't want it to turn into.
That's actually a good example, because that was consideration. The height of that medical office building, where they had to do something with the windows. I remember that.
I mean, it's reversed, but still.
The residents
Yeah.
behind it
Right.
were up at that level, so yeah, no, I.
Yep.
Zero.
Yeah,
You look at Woodmont, I mean, Woodmont can pretty much look down on Wawa. Or Weiss,
Right.
not really Weiss, but like Wawa, so it's. Again, I think it's just,
yeah,
we just need. I think clarity is what we're aiming for in this amendment process, that's all.
So from abutting properties, well, then it would be up to you to. Force that.
I don't so.
You're right, we do that.
Could you do from a ground level of abutting properties?
No, but that's the point Vince is making, that if it just so happens that the surrounding properties are higher. And they can look down on it, you might not be able to see the AC units or whatever on the roof from street level. But you can see them from the buildings on the abutting properties because they happen to be 20 feet higher, just because of geography.
So let me go back to ask Mark.
You have to consider what becomes unreasonable, I think.
Right.
Is what it is.
Oh, and it's like, if this language you feel is enough that we can write in a review letter that this needs to be shielded to this property because it can be seen, does that mean completely? Or?
I would say that the industry
Ours-
standard, for shielding is street level. So you would say from street level, and sometimes people use parapets to hide it. But the problem is sometimes they still peek up over those parapets, so that's why the screening enclosures work so well. Sometimes people say from the street and ordinances say from the street, but I think the problem that we would face there is, okay, it's from the street and then they only cover 1/3 or half of the HVAC and elevator shaft. And then, like I had mentioned previously, you're walking in the parking lot into the building on the backside and you can see everything. So I think if we're going to make a modification to it, I have here that utility features shall be completely shielded from view at street level using architectural grade features. And then that way it's street level, 360 degrees around the structure. And then, we don't potentially have to worry about the issues with the butters, and their height and what grade they're at, because that street level really that's kind of like Brian was saying earlier, street level is kind of the industry standard terminology for shielding, elevator shafts and HVAC and all that.
So I think this is another one, unless one of us has an opinion on it, if you guys want to. Figure out exactly how, you're the ones using it, so,
Will just surprise you.
yes.
I think we have enough interpretation completely, don't we?
Yeah, if one of us had a strong opinion, then, but I don't think anyone's gonna jump at this one.
So this section will be revised for subject to further revision. Yeah.
No, but the good points that have been discussed. Sure.
Yeah, no, it makes total sense,
Right.
they are things that we hear, there's always that unique one that's in.
You're gonna have that, that's the unfortunate reality, no matter what you're right,
Yeah.
there's going to be an exception that comes in 2 weeks after the ordinance is about.
Oh,
And I think I don't wanna get too crazy on this because it could affect emergency services as well. Servicing that building,
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I don't wanna get too crazy, but.
Yeah, definitely. All right, Nate, you continue on.
All right, so continuing on, one thing that we discussed at length at the last workshop meeting included our continued work to try and get those doing development activity in the township to utilize a functional main entrance facing the street, in particular Hamilton Boulevard, but also other streets as well. We've had a couple of land development projects come in where the applicants have wanted to put the rear of the structure facing our main boulevard or other streets in the township, with basically all the internal entrances and access ways not visible from the street. And we're either working with them to negotiate design elements that make it look like it's fronting on a street, or negotiations along those levels as we go through the development process, just to try and get what our Hamilton Boulevard corridor plan calls for and what the design guidelines call for. So, again, I just want to call this out, and this is in the commercial district that we're in right now, but you'll see it in West Ghostville and others as well, which is, what was the best way to make sure that the language encompassed everything? And it is that all buildings shall utilize the functional main entrance with a traditional storefront, office, or business or another use facing the public road. So if you want to have another secondary entrance on the side or the back, that's fine. But we want to make sure that if you're facing, especially the main boulevard, that your functional main entrance faces the road. I don't know if we want to go into much more detail on that, but that's essentially what we've been trying to get for a long time, given the fact that others would like to have it facing a side parking lot or facing a parking lot interior and have the rear face the road. We're trying to get away from that. We've been doing it so for a while, but this time it really sets it in stone. So there's no room for further interpretation that would muddy the water.
Nate, you mind if I jump in?
Go for it.
So right now, the ordinance says building shall have the appearance. Okay, so we're trying to get the functional side, take appearance out and make it functional. That's
Yep.
right. Because we we've run into this with, or, you know, with land developments. Yeah, since the ordinance was written, like, so that was the intent. We're trying to clean that up, so that it's not appearance, it's traditional storefront. Again, like they said, they can enter from the side or rear, but they have to have a traditional entrance. Yeah. You know, that is the look. So that's all. Thanks.
All right, great.
One thing I wanted to say, Nate, I don't think I got to talk to you about is that I think we should make this consistent between the various comments, like this is in multiple sections, so I think maybe we make. And they do differ slightly in the language, so let's just make sure we get it to be uniform.
Yeah, whatever we.
I got it.
Personal, it's the same in West Wilton.
Right.
Okay.
The same note is gonna be in two different districts.
All right, Nate, I think there's consensus on that. You can go to the next.
Great. I'm making a note of that right now on what Mark mentioned. I think that's a great idea. Okay, as we're continuing along, I mean, this is really minor, but again, streetscape enhancements, including sidewalks, crosswalks, this is D, of streetscape requirements. And again, this is just making sure that the street walls are added. We had language at one point in time that was allowing people to utilize hedging. What we found is the hedging was dying due to snow plowing or salt on the road or drought or whatever. And again, these street walls that we're advocating on Hamilton Boulevard and elsewhere in the township are really, they're as functional as much as they are fashionable. And the intent is to ensure that, you know, we're blocking some of the headlights going out onto the street so that they don't cause glare for drivers or people who might be walking or riding their bike. So I just wanted to make sure that we had street walls included in there. One recommendation that was made previously was where we were having at the discretion or at the approval of the township zoning officer. We had some internal discussion on that, and we wanted to make sure that actually enforcement is what the language of the ordinance states. So any time that that language pops up, we've just stricken it out. And now we're moving into the West Coastville Commercial District. And I think, you know, to not to belabor it or go into a big long thing, but West Coastville Commercial District used to just be the regular C commercial district. And we created the West Coastville Commercial District because one of the things that had been happening over the years was individual properties were being bought up, combined, torn down, and turned into auto-oriented strip centers, essentially. Our Hamilton Boulevard corridor plan, as well as a number of our other planning documents, as well as just the intent to try and maintain the historic integrity of this village, which, you know, is an old streetcar village that is even older. I mean, Hunan Springs is an old inn that goes back, I think, to the 1700s. Is the intent here was to try and preserve this village that we have in our township, and not lose it all to a redevelopment that basically strips it away. So that was the intent. That's why this whole zone was created to begin with. And I think just for purposes of helping out those who might be watching from home or in the audience this evening, or our planning commissioners, to just call that out is important. And with that, we kind of get into a lot of the stuff that we were just talking about with the C commercial district. One of the items that we did want to make clear, accessory uses. If you look at accessory uses, which is 2710 B06, we added an I, which is residential apartments above or within the structures having first floor commercial uses. It had always been the intent of the creation of this district, because it was not previously allowed under our zoning ordinance to be able to have those multiple uses in the structure. So if I have a single family home and I'm a new owner of that single family home, and I decide that I'm going to turn the first floor into my professional office under the prior zoning ordinance, if I had a full upstairs where I could put a kitchenette, I would not be allowed to put in that apartment. And the intent here is to maximize the usage of these buildings and get the best value for adaptive reuse for them that we can get. And that would in some cases include an accessory residential apartment somewhere in that structure that would allow for, you know, the business to still operate, but someone to live there. Otherwise, it could just sit empty. Or again, when you look at it from a financial standpoint, in part, one of the reasons why we were looking at seeing demolitions and just redevelopment. So we're just trying to get the most we can out of these existing buildings and make sure that it's good and worthwhile for people to be preserving them. Going down again, here we go. If you go down to 2710B08, we just talked about it. Employ the use of the functional main entrance. We're just going to change that language to match exactly with the commercial district, as Mark suggested. And there you see the financial advisors at the corner of Brookside and Hamilton, which, you know, way back in the day used to be, I believe, the general store. So we use that as a good solid example of a great adaptive reuse that we try to advocate for. Same, one of the things that we were running across, if you go to 10B08, number 2, buffers are not required between existing abutting commercial and non-residential uses in West Coastville because you're existing, they're existing buildings. So we're just saying that because there are currently commercial buildings that do exist, and creating a buffer there is just not possible. So when buffers shall be required anytime there's newly constructed or an adaptively reused non-residential use abuts a residential use. We're basically just saying, okay, if you fix the property up though, or you start doing construction or it's new, then we will need to have you put the buffer in. So we have the we have the project design companion, which is basically the little booklet that we ask people who are doing land development activity, conditional use activity, to submit to you, the planning commission, and us as staff, that shows all the architectural renderings and the nice looking you know, street view landscaping plan of what the building's finally going to look like. I just cleared it up and said, hey, we need it during the conditional use or the preliminary plan process, whichever comes first. We also had with land development plans, but we noted that it was redundant. So that's just some wordsmithing right there. And again, to the satisfaction of the township zoning officer, we remove that for wordsmithing. Any new land development, conditional use, or subdivision shall utilize those architectural grade cladding. We just want people to take care of these existing buildings, or if they're building something new, make sure that it matches our design guidelines. That's why we have them. And with that, that's the extent of changes for the West Coastville District. It was really just a couple of wordsmithing items to make sure that when someone comes in with an application, we're getting what our plans call for and what we'd like to see. Highway Commercial District is essentially the same thing. There are no large scale changes that were even really contemplated for this section. But I wanted to make sure that we covered all the commercial districts. Again, you'll see it down there. Shall employ the functional main entrance of the storefront facing the street. We'll make sure that that language matches. And we're also ensuring that the landscaping, the street walls or fences are included at the street and in the parking area. Just, you know, for the avoidance of doubt, if you're doing a development in the highway commercial area, we still expect that streetscaping.
Nate, how come you left it at the 5 acres instead of switching it to 2 like you did for the others? Just because
We have bigger lots there
Okay.
still. Yeah.
Being consolidated as well, but I guess not.
Yeah, it's really due to the size of lots that are available there. Whereas in the C commercial district, when we were looking and basically doing a survey of what's available there for development, the lots were smaller. And that takes us to signs, essentially. Now we start with signs and parking, we'll get into some nitty gritty. This is where, you know, again, with processing applications, dealing with enforcement matters, we just want to make sure we're clear and concise. Working our way through signs, a lot of this is based off of, again, comments from staff over the years as we've instituted and enforced ordinances. So we have the new language that I think we discussed previously in August, but the first big change here, number 5, on-premise freestanding signs that aren't monument signs in commercial and industrial districts that include a portion of the sign within 20 feet of the ultimate right of way shall ensure during design and placement that there shall be no conflict with utility, road maintenance, snow removal operations upon completion. That is standard nuts and bolts, common sense, but we wanted to make that 100% clear as part of the design because we have had a number of land developments occur on Hamilton Boulevard where there was concern about what's going to happen with potential utilities, road maintenance, snow removal. So we want to make sure people are factoring that into their site design. Another item which has been consistently discussed for some time and we wanted to now include was the abandonment clause. So any type of sign regulated in the section that is abandoned or not advertising, announcing an active use for a period of more than 3 months shall be deemed not in compliance with this chapter and will require adherence to it. So we're basically putting a sunset provision on it so that a standing monopole sign that's been there for 20 years, if business leaves, if it sits for 3 months, the new folks have to come in and we want to just make sure that they're employing our current design standards. So it was determined, when we did the rewrite in 18 and 19, and we have again the Hamilton Boulevard corridor plan and our design guidelines, what the design intent and aesthetic was to be for the township. So this gives us the ability to make sure that we can get that. I think previously it might have either been 12 or 24 months, but we felt that, in this case, 3 months would get us the reset that we needed for that type of signage, especially if a new business is coming in and investing in the township. And this may include the replacement of existing signs with new signs or modification. So in other words, if something's there and they can spruce it up, as long as it meets the ordinance, we would welcome that. And again, it's tough being prescriptive like that, but it is how we achieve our goals of, what we hear when we have all the outreach sessions with everyone on what they'd like to see as we do our planning work and how we put together all those plans and design guidelines. The illumination of signs, which has always been a discussion point. We had illumination set so that there's no difficult in the interpretation here on page 4, number 2. Illumination at regular intensity from 5 a.m. to 11 p.m. or a half hour after. And then between the hours, we're just asking that it be dimmed so that it doesn't cause nuisance or glare or hazard. We're just asking when signs are lit in the township after hours, that they don't get shut off completely, but they do get dimmed for safety purposes, essentially. We then go into monument signs, which were a new concept that got entered in during our rezoning exercise in 18 and 19 and the establishment of our design guidelines. They're essentially freestanding signs that are made of masonry and have masonry work with them. They're fairly common, and it was discussed that, it would add a new level of design preference for us. We did have it here in 1B that unless associated with a residential development, church, place of worship, school, or pre-existing business, or a nonprofit entity, that the monument signs should be in our commercial districts and in our industrial districts. So that's just to make sure that while pre-existing businesses, nonprofit entities, churches, schools, and new developments and subdivisions can all have monument signs, we're basically laying out the criteria on who gets them and how they go. And then that way they don't proliferate all over the place at the same time. In C, we note that monument signs can include digital LED signs, but they're by special exception for schools and places of worship. You need not look any further than some of our schools and places of worship in the township to see what we mean by that.
But maybe can I clarify? So that's because digital LED signs are only allowed in certain zoning districts.
Correct.
Church or a school, like we had
They're always-
Willow, is in suburban district. So if they want to put an LED sign in a district, that's not allowed. It's allowed by special exception. That's all that's clarifying, so make sure
Yep.
that was explained.
In D, thank you for that, Vince. In D, again, we were just tightening it up a little bit with the digital LED language as opposed to the changing. And that's because the technology has changed so much. It's the industry standard now. And then we've always had that it will not exceed 20, or I'm sorry, it will not exceed 32 square feet. That's the existing language. We've changed it to the height of 9 feet to make sure in certain places it remains visible, and that the LED area monument sign will be no more than, and we have it as 1/2 of the total sign area. And, I would like to actually ask everybody's opinion on that. When you have a smaller sign, 1/2 of the sign area is pretty reasonable. You could shrink it to 1/3, but the big thing is you just don't want the screen to be really small, surrounded by a huge frame of masonry work, right? Like if someone's gonna be putting one of these in at a place of worship or school for announcements, you want to make sure that it's visible from the street. It'll still have to comply with all of our other ordinances for these digital lit LED signs. But, if everybody is comfortable, 1/2 of the face area of the sign can be LED. If the planning commission's good with that, that was kind of what we were thinking. Otherwise, you might end up with a really small screen and a big masonry sign around it. And driving by, it might be hard to read. So.
Is your goal, I'm just trying to understand this one, it sounds like the goal is almost to make it so that you're just ensuring that it's actually visible, or is there something else there that I'm missing?
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of my reasoning on it. It was if we say that it has to be smaller than 1/2, and say I'm a place of worship and I put one in, but we say that it can only be 1/4 of the sign area of the total sign area, or 1/3 of it. The question is the sign going to be legible as I drive by on the street?
So I guess, and I don't know if it even matters, but do we need to regulate the size? Like, what is the goal there? Are you concerned that it would be too large? I'm just wondering why we get even to that point.
Yeah, essentially, the concern would be, would it get to be too big? Because if we have a total sign area that's not to exceed 32 square feet, we're talking about a 32 square foot LED screen. So we kind of want to make sure that it's like somewhat framed, and that there's a balance, that, the sign aesthetic of, what we require or what we have in place with the monument signs in terms of brick or stone, is included in addition to the sign. So it doesn't just become one big LED sign.
So Nate, let me just clarify that. So if you have,
Sure.
if they're proposing a 42 square feet monument sign, you can't put a 32 square feet LED and have 10 square feet of
Right.
brick and copy. It would have to be half of that 42.
And is the height the sign, or the height, what's the 9 feet? Is it the height of the sign or the placement of the sign on the building?
Yeah, maximum height's 9 feet for the sign.
So the sign can be higher if it's placed higher than 9 feet on the
This is a monument one, so this would be freestanding.
freestanding with a pole, right? They can have a pole or a base to it,
Monument sign as defined would have to be
like the ones church had and.
brick or stucco to match the
The
architecture.
base is the brown,
Correct. Right.
okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm good with the way that it makes sense there, that we don't want them to be too large, that makes sense, but when you were talking about the quarter or whatever, I wasn't sure, I just didn't completely understand where you were trying to go, it makes
Oh,
sense.
sure. I apologize if I wasn't clear, Wes. Yeah, no, it's really just the size of the screen. That was really what it came down to.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to F. This is again, one of the things that we've talked about, was with the monument signs, some internal discussions actually after some of them got built, and actually speaking with some of my peers on it too. With stucco, sometimes the stucco doesn't have the staying power, no matter how well it's constructed to begin with, just because of the elements and everything. So the intent here was to really try and keep people utilizing that brick and stone and other masonry and related material. Where we previously called out the use of stucco, there was just concern with what could happen with it, and also if it matched the look and feel of what we're trying to achieve. Right below there, we have a local hospital's monument sign, and they're utilizing stone, they're utilizing brick. Some of the areas with the sign face, I believe, is just sheet metal that's been, stamped with the text and whatnot, but that's kind of the look and feel. And of course, we want to make sure that everything is well landscaped, so we always have planting beds and islands listed in there, because we don't just want to have a standard sign. We ask that everybody puts in the time and effort to do a little bit of landscaping on their site. Moving on down the line, again, C, after D, I'm sorry, after C on D, unless otherwise specified, temporary signs shall not exceed 32 square feet and shall be erected no more than 30 days before or after an event. Again, that's just from a note that we had at the staff level for some time.
It was 40, we're reducing it to 30.
Right, we shrunk it. Moving down to exempt signs. These are signs that are exempt from this ordinance. If you go to B, banners attached to light standards identifying a specific place or facility shall not exceed 4 square feet, but shall still adhere to all other township ordinances. Basically, we just want to make sure that in the event that a private user is utilizing the banners on their light standards in a private shopping center or in another facility of some sort, that they're just with those banners adhere to the township ordinances. J, we just changed it to a shall. That way it gives it more staying power. Signs prohibited in all districts. So this one was a little important due to some of the potential applicants that we did hear from over the years. Flashing, blinking, animated, moving signs of any type. We just wanted to ensure that the section regulates window signs, but we also signs affixed to buildings and freestanding signs and signs on mobile stands. So any sign that you can kind of think of, you are now, that could be flashing, blinking, or animated, is regulated under, specific provisions. And then we make it abundantly clear so no one gets concerned about it, that we're not talking about holiday lighting. We're talking about advertising signs and lights. We put that in for G as well, outlining of roofs and doors and windows with illuminated tubing or string of lights. We've had businesses, and I'm sure you've seen them as well. It'll be May, and there will be lights on an existing building on roof lines to try and bring attention to it. One, that doesn't necessarily match our design guidelines, but two, it's not something that we're trying to achieve. But at the same time, again, we're not trying to prohibit holiday lighting. It's for off-season, for advertising purposes, just to make it clear. Jay, I know that this one was an interesting point from our August meeting. I know that we got a little bit of a chuckle out of it, but it's true. Giant inflatable characters for businesses when they're opening up, whether they mimic character or structure or a shape or form, whether they're stationary or moving. You've probably seen them. We just want to make sure that people are aware that those are not permitted signs in the township. The big moving balloon characters and so on and so forth are not permitted. Vehicular signs, we just added residential and non-residential zoning districts for when we're talking about vehicular signs for parking lots and so on and so forth. Just clarification. Modification of signage size for identification of residential and business developments so that you can see it. We went from 30 square feet to 32 with a maximum height of 8 feet. And again, thinking about snow and how high that can get sometimes, and thinking about being able to see it as you drive by, we just want to make sure that the sign actually does its job. Going through this whole thing here, we then move into signs permitted in districts, and we're just mentioning, you see the AP district there, that's our agricultural preservation district. I think this is a good point to bring up one of the discussions we had. We're listing the following types of signs that are permitted in the agricultural preservation, rural, semi-rural, suburban, and urban districts. So these are our residential districts. And if you're an existing business and you qualify per your use, after you submit your permit, you could have a wall sign, you could have a monument sign, and you can have a digital LED monument sign. I'm talking about proposing removing the freestanding sign. And we're talking because the language is redundant if you take a look at it with the monument sign. It's essentially the same thing. So we were being redundant there. And two, the single pole projection sign, which is the pre-existing pole signs that we were talking about, because we were thinking in our residential zones, again, per our planning documents and whatnot, especially if you do a new subdivision, you put in a monument sign, that there's a look and feel that we're trying to achieve. And those would be the types of signs that would be permitted in those districts. Is that something that everybody's comfortable with? It's really kind of just making sure that we're trying to employ our design standards that we adopted. But it does remove, one type of sign. But again, the intent there is from an administrative perspective, that's what we require with new developments anyway.
Anybody have?
Any opinion on that, or?
Sounds like we're all good with it.
Okay. Making it clear that in that district as well, only one freestanding monument sign shall be permitted along a street frontage. So just in case for the avoidance of doubt, again, if you're on a corner lot, you can have 2 freestanding monument signs on each of the public streets. And then that way, if I'm a place of worship or pre-existing business and I'm on a corner, I can have that use in place. We just wanted to clarify that. When we move on to 2215, now we're talking about our village districts. So East Texas Village District, and West Coastville Commercial District, which at the end of the day, it's a commercial district, but it's still a village district. And we're just talking same exact thing. What type of signs are allowed here, what the regulations are. Wall signs in the West Coastville District, when permitted, may have a second additional wall sign that won't exceed 2/3 of the total allowable sign area. The reason for that is, again, you have an existing structure and the desire to put in 1 or 2 signs for a business, or, potentially 2 users for the lot. And then again, we did what we did previously, removing the on-premise freestanding sign because it's redundant with the monument sign. So we're just keeping it and branding it all under that monument sign. And we removed the single pole projection sign, trying to get that look and feel that we established with the design guidelines. And we allow for the digital LED monument sign by special exception. And again, if you look at E, it's one sign along your public frontage. In the event of the corner lot, you can get 2. That way, it removes any doubt. You get 1 sign, 1 monument sign, that's it. Now we move into the more intense commercial districts. So that's our standard commercial district and the commercial Spring Creek districts that are over on Route 100. And again, we're looking at really doing a lot of what was discussed previously. You could do your additional wall sign, you get your on-premise freestanding sign, your monument sign, and again, we're trying to remove that single pole sign and your digital LED monument sign. And again, along your frontage, that's it.
Nate, can I jump in?
Yeah, go for it.
I think the biggest thing with the update for the wall window signs is, where the issue with enforcement or, when people come in, that the language now says 1 or more signs shall be permitted. So they are, whereas when it comes down to enforcement, okay, well, 1 or more, well, how many is more?
Right.
You
Right.
have 10 and you're still under the square footage, that's not the intent. We want to have, 1 sign per street permit, right? So, I think that's really where we want to try to clean. That's really the gist of the wall and window signs, right? We're just trying to clean it up so it's clear.
And I think this is covered, but what about like if you have some of the open signs? Fairly large, like the type of sign that they would put on their like when they're open, they turn it on, sometimes they're flashing, so that would not count in the signage.
Correct, I think the zoning ordinance specifically defines that as you're allowed to have an open, I think it defines it, you're allowed to have that in a window sign, so a wall or a window sign. I'll double check on that, I think our ordinance does exempt that open sign.
Okay, I guess I should be more specific. There are kind of the old school ones was the traditional, it actually only said open, but I guess I've seen them where they're adaptive signs where like. Sometimes they'll say sale, like, because they're they're an LED sign, they mostly say, they do all the animation and all that stuff. But I've seen them where they're different signs, would that apply in this case? That
That would apply to
secondary
a
sign,
wall or a window sign, if it's in a window, it's
Right.
considered
that's
a
a sign,
sign, that is a sign.
so if it says anything other than open though.
Yeah, and technically that's a digital sign.
Right, I know,
It's not allowed, so that would be, enforceable.
okay, yeah. Yeah, fine.
Yeah, but it's all the thing, like, honestly,
Yeah.
this is what we're trying to
Yeah, no,
eliminate those items here, so. I'll look that up for you, I'm pretty sure the ordinance does address those open signs or, I think one of the biggest things. Are what I would call, like beer descriptors.
Yeah.
Right,
sure, million and one
a
signs.
million signs in the windows and. We really don't address, because it says one or more signs shall be permitted, well, what's more?
Yes,
And now we have to start calculating different things, so. Just want to clean. that
Yeah,
up. So,
makes sense.
One wall sign, we want it cleaner, meet the ordinance. Yeah.
so traditional stagnant, old school open sign, totally fine. Neon sign,
I think that is allowed. I think it's allowed, again, let me check on that, but a changing message for a blinking sign, not allowed.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you. All right, so we're making our way, as you can tell, through the districts here. So now we head into our industrial, highway, commercial, highway enterprise, highway Spring Creek and Orlick districts. So these are like our most intense districts for use. It's where industrial activity occurs. It's where we have highway commercial uses that are visible from the bypass, the highway. And so what we're trying to do here is
Hey,
this, yeah,
I'm sorry, can I quick jump back to commercial quick?
yeah, sure.
So just D, I know that we added D. Which says only one freestanding or monument sign shall be permitted. So another thing that we noticed when we were reviewing the ordinance, it says. The current ordinance says these signs. Just says signs in accordance with the following regulations. So the way we looked at the ordinance now. Technically. You could say the signs that allowed are wall, window, on premises. Pylon. Freestanding, so we wanted to just make sure that. They don't say, oh, here's our monument sign, now here's our freestanding sign, here's our pylon sign.
Right.
We just want to, that's part of that clarify, and I wanted to point that out since that is an added language. That's all, so.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, thanks for that, Vince, because we were getting, I think Chris had mentioned it, some people were asking about multiple users on a lot and everybody wants a sign, and then we're afraid we're gonna get, 3 pole signs on a single street frontage for a lot, and that's a lot of signs, so thank you for bringing that up.
All right, I'll let you go, I won't interrupt you.
No, bud, go for it. I appreciate all this was a team effort, just so everybody knows. Vince and Chris have spent so much time going through and basically fine tooth comb on the ordinance to make sure that what we're trying to do here works. Because they're the ones who are really employing this day in and day out. So, their feedback has been crucial. And, Vince has given you the why because we've seen it. This is why we're making these changes. And then, going into these intense districts that we're talking about with like the industrial and the highway, well, here is where we recognize we've got some of our biggest users. We have some of our more traditional, large scale industrial, large scale commercial users. And, there's going to be some latitude with the types of signs that are expected there. And we kind of have to recognize that when you're close to the bypass, when you're close to a highway interchange, when you're a large industrial use. So what did we do? We recognize again, we have the wall signs. with the one additional sign at 2/3 so we don't have 10. We have our freestanding, I'm sorry, our on premises freestanding sign, our monument sign, the single pole projection sign. And then, of course, our language, only one of the above items, as we noted, and as Vince just noted. Some of these users have these types of signs already, and they're gonna wanna recycle them as time goes on. We just gotta recognize that's the area of the township that they're in. So, we do know that. 3, we didn't really change too much right here, but, the highway enterprise district is where a billboard is allowed under the zoning ordinance. So we have that language. That's been the case for years. It's there. We're just making,
Question,
Nate,
Yep.
how did we? It's almost just for the humor of it. How did we arrive at 81 square feet on letter F monument sign?
that was actually a discussion point that was had, some time ago. And I'm ready, willing, and able to have the discussion. But with,
Can it be
with-
8?
Yeah, how did you come up with such an odd, I mean, everything else we do is at least rounded though.
yeah, it's the desired size of potentially a larger monument sign for a large development. If Hamilton Crossings ever wanted to come in and do a new monument sign, it would basically be allowed to meet those dimensions.
10 1/4.
If they wanted to go 9 by 9, they could go 9 by 9.
Can we round it off? Think that's the
Sure.
question.
Yeah, we want to round it off to 80, 82.
9 by 8.6.
Yeah.
Well, so in the previous, well, not previous, I should say current ordinance. Highway commercial, wall or window and on premises freestanding are the only allowed signs.
Yeah.
So we've added
Right.
monument and single pole, so, I mean, I think 80 is good for a monument sign in highway commercial. And single pole projection, we put in as 36. I don't think we wanna go too much bigger than
Yeah,
that,
no,
because,
it's
that's gonna be, that could be up in that district, it could be potentially 18 feet, maybe higher than that.
It was strictly because it was an odd number.
Yeah. But now's a good time for the question. Do we
Yeah.
want, you know,
Your
Do-
dreams. Signs.
Yeah.
Signs.
And
What's that sign, everywhere sign?
Flashing open sign. Not.
Alright, so Nate, I think you got the feedback on there, 80.
80?
80. Everybody else that good with that?
This is going to cause so many problems.
It's the little things.
It's
It's
guaranteed.
the little things.
Then-
Speaking of which, how do we feel about single pole projection in these zone districts? I mean, the reason why I have them down as permitted is because there are already so many of them that are pre-existing essentially. I mean, we have a lot of them that are already there.
This is the district.
do- Is there the desire to keep it or is there the desire to change that?
So. This is where they should be.
What's the projection? Technically, what does that mean? It
That
projects
is,
from internally onto a sub.
Let's look at the definition.
yeah, definition. It's like, considered a lollipop sign.
Yep.
Right.
What's the projection aspect of it? Does that mean it's like a screen?
Thanks.
No, it's projected from the inside. It's just, is that what it means? It just means there's the light
And
inside it?
When I Google it, it just comes up as a whole bunch of like hotel style signs or.
Yeah, I mean, it
I
must
mean,
be,
could that be called internally illuminated?
I mean, it must be, that must be a
Yes.
term of art.
Yeah, that's how I would interpret it. Do we have a definition?
I don't think it's, I don't know.
Fine. Nate, what
Yeah.
made you choose that specific terminology as we're just not sure what that.
That terminology has been what's been on the books for us for many, many years. This is not new language. The single pole projection sign is what we've had on the books. If we want to redefine it, we can, but it was like a previously defined type of sign that's been used and in our zoning language, like way back. So if we want to try and rebrand it, we can. I mean, I'm open to putting a new name to it, but yeah, it's supposed to be like a monopole or pylon sign essentially.
Pilot sign, that's what I found here.
Yeah, that's why I thought was.
Yeah. I mean, if you want, we can just change the name of it.
But
That seems more clear than a single pole projection.
if you had pylon sign, then we need to define it.
I mean, this is.
We just have to be changed consistently throughout the whole.
Right.
Right, that's the thing, and we have a lot of language, so, you know,
I'm not recommending a change unless if you thought that it made it more clear. And if it works for you guys, it's all that matters.
If the users know what that is, the people that are putting these signs up, then there's no reason to change. Does anybody come in and ask what that is?
I don't think in recent years I can remember where we had it.
Nobody uses them anymore.
yeah, not really. It's one of the reasons why I was asking, do we even want to have it in those? I mean, I had it because we have a lot of pre-existing ones in there, right? Do we just want to get rid of them though and have them have a sunset provision to them?
Well, I think the difference between that and a freestanding sign is a freestanding sign also. It's typically either on 2 poles or it has to be designed to be architecturally compatible with. That, or a single pole projection sign is like I said, like a lollipop sign or,
Yeah.
you know. Gas.
Yes.
The interstate.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
Again, that's the interpretation here, that could be not someone else's interpretation. Yeah, I don't think, again, I can't remember a recent thing, I would say probably 10 years that I'm here that we ever
Had someone ask for that.
issued a permit for that type of sign.
Perfect, let's not worry about that.
Leave it alone,
All right.
so be it. Go.
So advertising signs, including billboards, we just tightened up a little bit of the language here with what that is. These are the off-premise or on-premise advertising signs. And, you know, we have a bunch of pre-existing ones in the township, but it just dictates, you know, again, what we're calling them from a naming standpoint. And then the big thing here that is important to note as part of the changes is if you scroll down, Q. A digital LED advertising sign, billboard sign, or electronically changing message sign shall be equipped and utilized at all times, automatic day-night dimming software to reduce the illumination intensity of the sign from 1 hour after sunset to 1 hour prior, i.e. exactly what we were asking for on the same one. So digital LED advertising signs can't be super bright at night. That's it. It's really the big change that we made here. Working our way into parking. The first set of red language there just talks about, again, this parking requirement matrix exhibit, which will be part of the final advertised ordinance. There's no proposed change in what the parking requirements are going to be. It's just how it's presented. That's it. So we currently make people go to the ITE, which is this big book that is used by traffic engineers to basically calculate your own parking requirements. And what we'd like to do, and what we are in the process of doing, is just putting together, like we have a use matrix for our zoning. This is going to be like a spreadsheet that basically says, okay, you have a retail store, you have an office. This is how much you need in the way of parking per XYZ. And we're basically making life easier for the applicants and for staff to confirm what's allowed in the way of parking.
So this is a pretty, Nate, this is a pretty substantial change, I guess, in that I mean, this topic comes up a lot when we're, for some of the larger projects, about how much parking they can handle. So you're saying this should make that easier for them?
Well, what it's going to do is it's going. We previously used to have, prior to the adoption in 19 of the rewrite, we had a listing, and it basically said, like, if you're a restaurant, if you're a store, you shall have X amount of parking spaces per number of seats in your restaurant or square footage of the office or whatever. Then we moved to the ITE, which basically calculates it per peak hour trips. And all this is really going to do, which will help everybody, is we are going to provide the numbers again that say, this is the parking that you need. Now, our intent, because as we go through this, you'll see this, Wes, and everybody, we have parking in reserve, we have shared parking, we have elements written into our ordinance that are basically, we even have a section that says you should not put in more parking than what the ordinance calls for. Because we do not want to be overparked. That being said, we recognize the need for it, but that's why we also have parking in reserve and say, okay, well, save this space. And if you find that you need it in the future, you can put your additional parking spaces there. So we're trying not to be overparked, but it will make it easier and more legible. And I think definitely on the staff side as well, everybody will be on the same page about what's required. So
Prior to the 2019 update, Nate, please correct me if I'm wrong. We had a parking matrix, right? Each individual zoning district had a matrix that said this type of use requires X amount of parking, right?
Yeah.
In 2019, we moved to the ITD manual, which doesn't define every use, right? So now you're searching for what's the most similar use on some things, right? And we want to make it a little more user friendly or not only for the applicant, but for us to make a determination of how much parking is required.
yep.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense to me.
We're jumping into the general regulations. A formally designed plan, which is signed and sealed and stamped by a registered design professional, shall be included with an application for parking. We just want to make sure that it's not a back of bar napkin sketch, and that it meets reputable design standards to make sure that it's safe.
Hey Nate, I'm lost here. What section?
Oh, sure, no problem. Parking at the very beginning of parking, part 23.
Yeah, what page? Are we still on the top? Oh, I see. I jumped too far.
Yep, so this is just a change in requirements for when you're looking to make a modification to a parking lot, basically, or parking area, that you gotta make sure that a design professional does it.
Hey Nate, can I jump in? I thought we had commented at the last meeting about making it saying or as required by the township department, you know what I mean, like, because we talked about if somebody comes in for an adaptive reuse or somewhere in the West Wiswell commercial and they need like 4 spaces, that we can waive the requirement for a sealed RDP.
You are right, yep. So
Just so the planning commission's aware, I know we discussed that, but if you're okay with the language, we add that in to say it's really discretion of, as we review it of the department.
Yeah, because.
Yep.
Because that, if you do have somebody come in to your example with small project. It would not be very easy for them financially, for the business owner.
Yeah.
To pay it, mountain survey and sign and seal a drawing for 4 extra spaces.
Right, definitely. And we can make the determination of
When
the
it's-
number of spaces,
Yeah.
right? And if they're required,
And if
whether
it's-
they are.
If it's a really small project,
Yeah,
you know,
and we
risk
run
to go out with a
through
tape measure. Do we have enough room? It's simple enough.
Yeah, we have, certified during staff that
Yeah,
certified in order to do that smaller. And
Yeah.
So I don't wanna just blanket it that it says it, and now
Inconvenient.
the interpret, technically if it says that. You have to go to the zoning hearing board.
yeah, but it is
Because we
nice.
can't make that determination because that's in black.
It'd be nice to have this language for the projects that start to get over that threshold of reasonable.
Right.
Where you can say, you gotta have an engineered plan. And if you just add at the discretion of the township staff, that would be super helpful.
We'll leave the language up to Mark to.
Yeah.
Put that in there, but yeah, I agree with you, Brian,
Yeah.
right? Because there are bigger items where we say, okay, well, now maybe stormwater is getting involved in.
Yeah.
Park and, driveway access, how close it is to,
Yep.
so then we may wanna say, okay. Now we need a formal, yeah.
We can discuss it, I think maybe You might wanna use the zoning officer so that they can appeal it.
Hmm.
Right? So.
Yeah.
Zoning officer is the one who makes the determination, they can file an appeal. to the
Yep.
zoning board. And that way, if they don't wanna do the the registered professionals drawing, because it's gonna cost too much, they can ask the zoning hearing for a variance, or overturn the decision of the zoning officer. That would probably be the best.
But it's.
So you're saying, good point, Chris, the zoning officer could make the, I'm saying,
You write the letter. I
right,
mean, the department makes the decision and the letter comes under your name, so that way the MPC provides a mechanism.
but he can still make the determination that not required.
Yeah.
RDP is not required, however, if you do make the determination it's required, they have a means to appeal, it's a zoning hearing, I got you.
And this is something, adding that language will help the smaller business.
Yeah, it's gonna be the ones that are on the cusp.
Yeah,
They're like, yeah, get a design plan, yeah, they don't want to. Makes sense.
All right, so the next one right after that, I know we talked about before, we just have a lot of larger businesses that'll have temporary tent sales or seasonal sales in parking lots, which is all well and good. Our ordinance does allow for it, but we just want to make sure that they don't take up all their parking with the sales area and then don't have adequate parking. So we have that in there to make sure that, they can prove that they still have the required parking, when they have their outdoor sales. So we're not dealing with inadequate parking. Because again, we have some bigger users that do use their parking as storage for product in season. Rolling through, number 8 on page 2 here. I think this is important because we've always said and tried to urge people gently about this, but we kind of found that when we did that, we're getting a lot of pushback. And again, this is, just tightening up the language where previously I think it said something to the effect of should and all that. We have parking spaces shall be primarily located at the sides and rear of a primary structure on a site, with handicapped or other minimal parking spaces located at the front. And the reason why is because we consistently hear, oh, I need to have all the parking in the front of the building. That's how it has to be. And if I'm doing a redevelopment on Hamilton Boulevard, or I'm doing a development on Route 100 where we have these design standards in place, we've said and made it clear, we don't want the first thing that people see when they see these properties is 10 rows of parking. We'd like to see, this nice architecture that they're building and have it closer up towards the street. So we've made it clear now that it's in the zoning ordinance that it has to be at the sides or rear of the primary structure. And if you have to have some parking in the front, it'll be your handicap, and it'll be your minimal other parking spaces. So, you could probably, if you're required to have 6 accessible spaces, you could probably fit another 2 or 3 in the front, and then everything else has to be on the side. So that's essentially what we're trying to achieve there. If you look at 9B, the township, yeah, yep.
Why even give them that? If the goal is truly to just, why give them wiggle room?
I think the wiggle room, and if you want, we could change it. One thing that we did hear from design professionals was accessibility from the handicap spots and accessible route into the building. So that's more or less why I felt, okay, if they're saying that is a legitimate reason, then we can do that. But if it's the recommendation of the planning commission, I mean, this is something that we've been fighting for almost 10 years to try and get people to do, to make sure that we get this design. I mean, we can say it'll all be on the side or the rear. It's just, I think we are definitely going to have a lot of ZHB applications for relief then, because we consistently hear it's just unattainable apparently.
I can see, some of the ADA requirements are quite costly. But the kind of the other part of that, the minimal parking spaces. The other minimal parking spaces. The goal is definitely put them in the back or on the side, which I think is very important, so. I don't know if others have an opinion on this, but I think that if we want to eliminate this question. And I mean, I'd love to hear a professional opinion on that too, if you think that's a really bad idea, but.
I'd be great with that.
I think the other minimal parking is too ambiguous, because does that mean 3 spaces or 10 or whatever? So that could be clarified better. The thing that I recall seeing with some of the meetings with developers are some oddly shaped properties that front of a busy street. And it's like impossible for them to get all the parking they need without putting some in the front.
Yeah.
So I guess what Nate is saying is rather than make them go to the zoning hearing board to get a variance, because you're not allowed to put anything in the front, you give some
Okay.
discretion. And then again, it might have to have some sort of, determination of the zoning officer language in there, because if they wanna do 15, but we think only 5 should be done, then maybe they get a determination and then get appealed. They're still going to the zoning hearing board though, so you can do it either with like a number that they would have to get a variance, or you can do it with the discretion language. But I agree with you that currently as written is left to ambiguity.
Yeah, because if the goal is to shut down this conversation, which I understand is one that everyone, for whatever reason, wants to go to the front of the building for this, but it looks so much nicer when parking is in the back or on the side, so. Yeah, whatever the appropriate language is, just to make it so that intent is, not in front, but if it has to, at least you don't have to go to the zoning board to do that.
Yep.
Anyone else have opinion on?
Great statement you made.
Nate, we're good.
All right, great. And yeah, I'll look at making the tweaks on that. I'm glad everybody, I think we're all in agreement on that, which is great, because that's something we've been trying to achieve for a long time. Parking and reserve is the next section, which I mentioned previously. So 9B, where it says the township reserves the right to require parking in reserve to be completed, i.e. kind of like calling out a deferral on a plan, like if we defer sidewalk and we call out and say, okay, it's time to put in your sidewalk. I just added by action of the Board of Commissioners, so they would either take a vote, so there'd be an official action that would require them to say, okay, it's now time to put in your parking in reserve. If we find out that someone has it and good for them, they're doing really well and they need more parking, then there would be a formal action by the board to get them to put it in. You'll see it there in 10. I brought that up previously. We said applicants should not construct more parking than is required, and we just changed it to shall, because anytime someone has a should, they say, okay, well, we're not gonna do that. And what we just wanna say is, do your parking calculation. This is the number of spaces you need. There's no reason for you to go way above and beyond. So, we just want to be clear on that. And then, in addition, we always have that demonstration of need study or document at the time of application of kind of like, well, prove your hardship. But that would have to get approved, and it'll be reviewed by Brian. And it'll be reviewed by township staff, by Chris, Vince, and myself, and make sure that everything is, clear. But, we'll see how that goes. 11 is our parking of commercial vehicles. And this is where I'd like some feedback from everybody. I did a fair amount of research in terms of the commercial vehicles with the gross vehicle weight, because previously we did have it set too low. I mean, it could have been, someone's personal vehicle. It did seem like, because this is an issue that we're receiving complaints about in the township, within many of our residential neighborhoods, how we manage some parking on public streets and even private property within people's driveways, some very large vehicles. I made the number 7 tons of gross vehicle weight. I don't know if there are opinions if we should bump it up even more, but it did seem like that hit the threshold. And I'm willing and able to take any feedback anybody has, because if we feel we need to change that, then let's do it.
So what does 7 tons, what's a
14,000 pounds, 10,001 is the DOT number requirement for federal government. So anything over 10,001, you have to have either, no, you have to have CDL to 26,000 pounds. But you're having box trucks at 7 tons, you're having a 14-foot box truck parking in the street.
So a box truck is in that category. 'Cause I just looked up like an F-350, which is, so 6,200 to 8,100 pounds.
Yes. The dualies, the big dualies, the 450s, you might get up to maybe 9,500 pounds, 9,500 pounds. I just think anything over DOT requires a DOT, you're just asking for trouble.
Yeah.
5 tons should be your threshold. Cause it's not, you're no longer just a normal truck that you're parking in your driveway.
Well, going back to what was it previously?
Pretty.
3. And what was, where was the issue? Like, what were the issues that were coming to you?
So box things like Rick's saying, so Pennsylvania classifies as, class 1 is 0 to 6,000, class 2
Yeah.
is 6,000 to 10. Right, class 3 is over 10, 10
Yeah,
to 14, so, I would agree with Rick to say, over 5 tons, right now you're over is 10,001, now it bumps you to class 3, which would be a box truck. Which is part of.
Is the goal, not a pickup truck.
Correct.
Even if it's a commercial pickup truck, which I mean, some people use it as both, but.
Right, it's more the box trucks and, or some places not tractor trailer.
And were you running into scenarios where a pickup truck, someone was complaining about a commercial pickup truck, someone has their landscaping logo on it?
Not as much, no. It's more the higher classes.
Yeah. So 5 instead of 7.
Yes.
You okay with that, Nate?
Yeah. 5, it is.
The one street that had home box trucks going, but this is addressing that issue. Yeah. What was that street?
Oh, yeah.
No, I know that, I just had the pictures. And
I mean, there's other, that's not the only place, but that's.
That's a prime location, I mean, there's no houses right
Right.
there that are parked.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad we're adjusting it and managing it because it's been a long-standing issue. All right, moving along, if you go down to the next page, page 4, E2. We discussed this last time. Every parking area shall include adequate turnaround for delivery trucks, garbage trucks, and maintenance vehicles. I mean, you'd be surprised, but we've had to tell people that they need to have that included. So that just makes sure that it's covered. We did have emergency vehicles in that before, but I removed it. And the reason we removed it was because we have separate language that requires and manages that for us. The next one, I have a mea culpa here. Yep.
You get the scroll, it's talking about that emergency vehicles language, right?
Yeah, I just had a quick question about, just jumping back to 11 there, parking commercial. Are there any districts that are allowed to park in?
Orlick,
Yeah, Orlick.
Right?
Yeah, our industrial districts,
Okay,
Orlick, industrial, yeah.
okay. Just want to make sure.
Yep.
Sorry.
And highway enterprise too, because, as everybody knows, Chance Road, we have a bunch of the users down there, who would definitely have those types of vehicles, so. Anyway, as I was about to say, with electric charging stations, I know we spent a lot of time at the last meeting talking about it, and, Mark reminded me, and
Mark, Nate. Somebody, so
We
confused.
talked about this, did we address the emergency vehicle thing, E2?
yeah, we did. Emergency vehicle's been removed.
We weren't at the language, Jessica brought that up at the last,
Yep.
meeting. Explain that again, because we weren't at the language.
Okay, yeah, so with the emergency vehicles, we regulate that through other means. And we also know that that is, not only is it required through our life safety plan that people are putting in, But we also get reviews through the fire marshal. And it's essentially one of those things where we want to make sure that the right party is reviewing it and the right party is either approving or asking for modifications in their field. So essentially, we're deferring to emergency services as part of their life safety review. Did I say that correctly, Mark?
Yeah, it's in the subdivision land development ordinance.
Yep.
And Of, I think it was you, Brian, right, was to leave it there and not put it in zoning as well, because it will cause conflict if who reviews what. So we left out emergency vehicles. You had suggested we put it in, but we didn't, and that's why.
Yep.
And the mechanism we have is the fire
And
Life
like,
safety.
yeah,
code as well. So 2021 IS.
E2.
E2.
What page? Yeah, go to I, the hot button.
All right, here we go. I'm gonna apologize here. I had in my notes, take it back to what it was. And that was incorrect, so I apologize. I originally had written down that we were just gonna go back and keep it the way that it was, but I know that now going back and Mark has some language here. And essentially it's 1 per 50 and then thereafter, as was previously discussed. So that's what I'm gonna insert in there. As long as everybody's still good with that. I know that we spent a good long time talking about that in August.
Here, I'm jumping in here because it's 8:30. 50 or more.
No, I'm gonna read what I wrote. today,
Okay, there you go.
okay?
David,
Before we started the meeting.
Listen,
because
Mark.
Brian and I saw that was changed back and we didn't know why. We talked about this for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Alright, so here's what I wrote, you tell me if it sounds like what we're going for, you guys wanted a chart. But I think we decided against the chart. Yeah, need a chart. Alright, we don't need a chart. Every parking lot with at least 50 spaces shall provide at least one electric vehicle charging station. So you always get one. If you don't wanna put one in, you have to go in.
For the parking lots, 50 spaces.
50 or more spaces, or at least 50 spaces, okay. Additional electric charging stations shall be provided at a rate of 1 per every 50 additional spaces.
So 100, if you have 100 spaces,
2,
you have 2, if you have 99, you have 1.
right?
I like that. Take 30 hours for a beer.
I was hoping that you guys would say chart.
Kind of came up with the 50 saying like, okay, if somebody comes in with 50 spaces. Is it really feasible to put in like, right, you know, so you're gonna have more people and we thought 50 was a good number, but we're throwing that out here. So
No, 50 is definitely the right number, and I think the concept. Generally gets, I think, or Ryan and I both kind of, we're on the same page on this one, so.
And making battery that lasts longer.
Yeah, and
We're trying to predict something that we have no idea where.
Right.
But we know it's going to have some relevance.
right. They're pretty expensive, I assume, the charging station.
And the main,
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
I think it's more, and we did touch on this last time and then just kind of went 18,000 directions. The reality is the way it currently stands, it was a little unclear as to when you had to start putting spaces in. And
Stations.
admitted, yes, stations, admittedly, it could have been read both ways. You didn't need anything until 75 spaces, then it was clear, but what about before that? So to me, this really clarifies what Mark just read. It's a reasonable number to start with. 50 and under, you don't need any. 50 and up, you need one, at least one, and then one for every 50 after that. It's super concise, super clear, and I don't know how many other uses we're gonna get that are gonna have thousands of parking spaces where it would be like, oh my God, do we need that many?
Right.
Where a chart might be appropriate, I think this is something that, in all honesty, not that we disregarded the planning commission's request or suggestion that we need a chart. I think that even though we didn't say it out loud, I think the consensus was, it's probably not necessary.
No, the goal was clear, we got that.
Right.
Purposeful, it's doing that.
Okay, good. Look at that. See?
All right.
Yeah, with Mark Fisher. We took it.
Shall be so.
We're
It
done.
ends it in 2 sentences.
There we go.
Yeah.
All right, L and M, no changes here. This is the one that requires, industrial uses to put in separators to intercept oil spills, which is something that came up with a couple of our previous applications. So now it's just baked into the zoning. M is, where parking spaces in a non-residential use face a street or road. It's our 3-foot masonry wall that I talked about before. It's our street design guideline standard, just making sure that that gets put in. And we're really making our way here towards the end. 4A, drainage from the parking area shall be directed to an adequate stormwater management system or on-site BMP. I'm gonna put further on this at the direction of the township engineer to make sure that it's following best engineering practices. 6A, there's some language there that's significant. We went over this before, but basically what it's saying is your side and buffer yard setbacks when you're in the West Coastville district are essentially going to match, one, design guidelines, but two, what's already in place. It kind of gets back to what we were talking about before. It's a built-out area already, and such as the West Coastville District. Newer expanded parking lot shall conform to the design guidelines. So if you don't touch it, it's kind of like it creates the standard by which you have to start putting in those streetscape enhancements. If you're building from new, you always have to, but we have people who are going to come in and they're going to adaptively reuse sites. So this is where it really covers it. And then it goes back to what we said before. Parking lot shall be located at the rear or the side of any new building within a development. Primary uses shall front directly on the street. I can add the language like we were talking about before too, with the ADA compliance.
Hey Nate, while we're on that.
Yep.
you just clarify, Says all parking spaces. Shall be at least 5 feet from any side or rear lot lines or within the required buffer yard.
Yeah, we're gonna remove that.
Oh, okay, because right now the ordinance, that contradicts the ordinance, it's not allowed, parking.
Right.
Are not allowed in the buffer area. Okay. Good.
Good. The last one, we get into the deciduous trees. This is our parking lot landscaping section. We're really starting to split hairs here, but we just want to make sure that we're putting it in the zoning because we've dealt with it. You're just planting the right type of tree to go in a island in a parking lot that isn't going to create a root system that heaves up asphalt and everything. So the language is there. Parking facilities adjacent to the right of way. If you look at this language, it's E. I mean, this is really just our streetscape standards and just making sure that they're fully in place. We talk about when you get down to 9B. This is a lot of language, but again, in a nutshell, this is screening and design requirements for parking lots. And it removes any question about what's required in terms of our streetscape design standards, makes it abundantly clear. Your 3-foot high wall or your street fencing. You can't utilize certain materials. It's just prescriptive on, what our design guidelines set out. So down to walls shall be constructed of brick, fieldstone, similar masonry products. And then we have a picture of it.
Yeah, nice picture. The next one, C1. Fences shall 4 feet in height, you mean shall be?
Yes.
That is a good picture. I think that's really gonna be helpful for people who are looking.
Yeah, so much of it to date has been, we've been kind of gently urging people to do it and this is really what the expectation is. This is what we've been spending a lot of time trying to get put in, so.
So if anybody wants to see a good example, Advanced Healthcare on Mine Site Road. They do have their screen wall up.
Yeah.
Pretty much looks like design guidelines, meets the the fencing in between the pillars matches the, I can't, it's too late for. The building, there you go.
Rest of the
There you go. So anyway, it's, they're putting landscaping in now, but I mean, I think that's a good example of how the design guidelines directly translated into a development, right? That's, so.
Yep, and we've been urging and working with, because we did receive, the Sprouts application for the continuance of kind of what they have at St. Luke's, moving all the way down Route 100 on that too. And I think that takes us to the end to tell, yep, that's really the last of it. So thank you. I know that was very, tense in terms of what we covered tonight, but I wanted to make sure everybody was aware of what we've changed, and also with the help of Brian and Mark, just a couple more modifications that we want to tighten things up, that we wanted to share with you, make sure everybody's okay with it. Where we stand right now is procedurally, I would be making the last of all of these modifications. And then we would be, if it pleasures the planning commission this evening, if it is up to you, we can basically get a motion to recommend to the board so that the board can start looking at this language, because we're trying to move it along. So
Dane, I think that you had shared a sample motion with myself, but I don't know that everyone else received that. Is that correct?
I think I sent it to everybody. If I didn't, I apologize. I shot it off as quick as I could today, once I finished it, so everybody could read it. So
Hang on, I think you could just do the motion as recommending the proposed amendments, subject to the comments made tonight, changes from the comments made tonight. And make it that simple. The sample motion actually listed out the sections that were being amended. But for purposes of the motion, I think you could say as presented, with comments.
All right, so before we do that, everyone's on the same page there for that idea. So who wants to make that motion?
What do you say?
Yeah, exactly. As stated by our.
I'll make a motion to conditionally approve the zone or ordinances, changes to the ordinance. Based on the comments and revisions that were made tonight.
Good. Recommended more, that being part of the motion.
Yeah, recommend approval of the zoning amendments to the board additionally.
Yeah, recommend to the board.
Additionally, perfect. Or a second for you. Second, all right. We have a motion that's been properly second, discussion. I don't see any from the public for discussion. All in favor, say aye. 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 5 ayes, motion carries. Nate, anything else that you need to comment before we wrap up here?
no, I think that covers it. I'm gonna now get started on these changes so that we can take the next step with it. I appreciate everybody working with us on this. Like I said, I know it's dense material, so thanks for all your time and attention.
Yeah, no, thank you.
No sleep tonight. Stay up all night.
But really, thank you, everybody on the board here for, going through this, just some of the more tedious stuff that we've done in the last 3 or 4 years. So, and it was overdue. It needed to be done. I have a feeling that's going to make staff's job significantly easier. And thank you, staff, for hours and hours of writing these notes, adjusting them, debating nuances, and then getting it here. So hopefully the Board of Commissioners meeting is expeditious and agrees that the Planning Commission did an excellent job.
We'll say that.
Yeah. Remind us. All right, so motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
All right. Second, all in favor, say aye. Aye. We are adjourned at 8:45.
Have a good night, everybody.
Thanks, Dave. Good job.